Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the midweek message with Liberty Church. And this week it's simply entitled Treasure. It's a short message, but it's a very powerful message on three verses that Jesus preached in Matthew chapter 6. At the beginning of Matthew chapter 5, Jesus starts preaching to the multitude, and it's probably considered the greatest sermon ever recorded. And this sermon Jesus gives, we refer to it as the Sermon on the Mount, spans chapters 5, 6 and 7. And I'm going to be reading the three verses from right in the middle of that sermon. You know, this sermon that Jesus was giving started out with a blessing. We call it the Beatitudes. You know, Jesus starts out by saying, blessed are those who mourn, and blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, and, blessed are those. It's a blessing. Jesus then rapidly moves on into things that would bring people into opposition with Jesus. He brought into opposition the religious system and the religious leaders of the day. Jesus started preaching a radical new idea that no one would have heard. Everyone was living under the law at the time. The Jews in Israel lived under a system of law. Now it says that Jesus came to fulfill the law, which he did. And this is part of it. Jesus says, you've heard in the Old Testament it said, do not commit murder. It's one of the 10 Commandments. Everyone knew that, and everyone lived under that law. You abide by the law, and you have righteousness. So the more you abide, the more obedient you are. And it was law-based. Whereas Jesus brought the gospel of grace, and he died and rose again so that we can have salvation, and that we have a redemption of our sin, and we come out of that sacrificial system. But Jesus says, do not commit murder. You've heard it say, do not commit murder. Jesus says, but I am saying, if a man thinks in his heart, he hates his brother in his heart, he's guilty, or he's in danger of judgment. Jesus goes on to say, it says in the Old Testament that do not commit adultery, which it does. It's another one of the 10 Commandments. But Jesus says if a man lusts in, if a man or woman lusts in their heart for somebody else, they're guilty of that. This is a radical new or a revolutionary new way of thinking. That Jesus is saying, so a man thinks or is in his heart. He can commit sin in his heart without the outward action of it. Jesus then goes on to say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless or pray. Bless those who curse you. This is complete madness to people. This just didn't happen. People would have been living under an eye for an eye, and retribution and judgment comes swiftly. And it was law-based. Jesus brings this gospel of grace to the multitudes, and it would have been very difficult for people to receive, especially the religious leaders, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the scribes, and the religious system. And actually, the greatest opposition Jesus had whilst he walked the earth was the religious leaders, religious leaders of the day. But in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19 to 21, it says this: do not lay up for yourself, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. And the third and last verse in that section that says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That word treasure, or that first verse there where it says, do not lay up for yourself treasure, whether in heaven or on earth. There is a Greek translation of that, and the word treasure there, the translated meaning of that is to deposit or deposit in. It's almost like banking a check, cashing a check at the bank or putting it into your bank account. It's a very similar sort of analogy. In the Greek there, it literally means, do not treasure for yourself treasures on earth. This is what it means. This verse came to life to me a number of years ago, and it was a conversation I had with someone whilst I was working in the mining industry. It was about 10 years ago now. And I was up at a camp in outback Australia, and I sat down in the mess, and I got speaking to an operator, a truck driver on site, and I'd never met this man before. Nice man, and we sat down and we started having a conversation. And whilst he was tucking into his T-bone steak, he actually said to me, 8 more years, which I thought was quite an odd thing to say at the beginning of a conversation. He just said 8 more years. So I asked him what he meant, and he said, 8 more years until I've got it made. And still, I said, why have you got it made in 8 years? And he said, 8 more years of driving a truck, and I can retire, and then I can start living. And this is a conversation I've heard or had with different people in different environments over the years. You know, people look towards their pension, and people look to retirement to start living or to start fulfilling the things in their life that they've wanted to do over the years. And for whatever reason, that conversation struck a chord with me. And I walked away from that and I said, that's it, Lord, I don't want to be. Not that that man was doing anything wrong, in the sense that they're very real things that we do in life. We put away for pension, or, you know, we pay off a mortgage, you know, we support family. We do all of these we do all of these things that are very real and normal worldly things. But the Lord just revealed to me that if you're placing your heart into that, and that is where you're finding your comfort, and that is where you're finding your hope, and you're placing your treasure in things of this world, then it will fail you, because everything in this world will pass away. Actually, it even goes as far as saying that even prophecies, even tongues, all of these things will pass away, but my word will never pass away. That's Jesus. So it's saying here, where your treasure is, there your heart is also. So banking up treasures on earth to provide us with hope and happiness, and you know, this is what Jesus is saying. We need to deposit in. We need to bank into heaven. You know, because that's our walk as Christians. You know, we display fruit. Yes, works. Faith without works is dead. You know, that's what we're doing with our works. Actually, Jesus said to it's called the rich young ruler in the Word. And he came and said, Jesus, you know, I abide by all of these things. What must I do? You know, what else must I do? I'm doing all of this stuff that you've told us to do. But Jesus turns to him and says, go away. And this man, obviously, rich young ruler, he was very wealthy. Go away, sell all you have, give to the poor, then come, follow me. Then you'll be perfect, Jesus said. You know, there's a cost that we heard about on Sunday to following him. But Jesus is making a very real point, that if you've got treasure here on earth and you're putting your heart in it, or you're putting your hope in it, you're putting your happiness in it, you know, that the treasure on earth here doesn't give you joy, it will give you happiness. But the Heavenly Father, treasure banked in heaven, that's the joy that we receive as Christians. You know, in the letter to Timothy, Paul wrote, you know, as we know, two letters to Timothy. And in the first letter, in chapter 6, this is what Paul writes to him. He says, godliness with contentment is great gain. So I'm just going to stop there. Godliness, that's our walk. You know, we take on the form of godliness, not through our own strength, not through our own righteousness, but by Jesus when we accept him, walk with him and be sanctified daily. Pick up our cross, deny ourselves, follow him. Godliness with contentment is great gain. So great gain for us is to have godliness with contentment. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we cannot carry anything out, nothing out. It's like the saying that I've heard a few times over here, that your hearse doesn't have a trailer hitch. You can't carry anything out of this. You came in with nothing, we'll go out with nothing. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. So this short message today is very simple. Where are you storing? Where are you depositing your treasure? What's in your heart? What are we placing in our heart? See, we heard on Sunday about following Jesus and putting him first. And with treasure on earth, worldly things that will pass away, are we putting them in our heart? Are we storing them up in our heart? Are we banking and depositing on earth here? Or are we depositing in heaven by good works, by obedience, by our walk with the Lord Jesus Christ? Because if we desire to be rich on this earth, it says that it will be a snare and a temptation. If we're chasing after riches all the time, the next thing, it will not satisfy us, and it will lead us into temptation. And it says here that men will drown they'll be destroyed, and there'll be perdition. So it says, which men in destruction, and harmful lusts which drown men in destruction and perdition. That's the message today. I heard an interview many years ago with probably one of the richest men on earth, and it was with Rockefeller. And the question was posed to him, how much money is enough? And he rubbed his hands together and said, just $1 more. So, where's your treasure? Where's your heart at? Where are we depositing? There's only two places you can deposit. That's on earth, or that's in heaven. Be blessed. Looking forward to Sunday. The message on Sunday will be brought by Pastor Patrick, and we'll be praying as well on Sunday for the schools returning. So we'll see you on Sunday at 10:30. God bless. Have a great week. Enjoy the sun while it's out. God bless.